I'd like to raise, but in general terms, this is an excellent bill. So, for too long, many of my constituents who have realised their dream of owning their own home have been trapped in a cycle of cumbersome bureaucracy and additional unnecessary and, quite frankly, unfair expenses in the form of both ground rent and service charges. Since becoming an MP, I've been supporting a number of these constituents, some of whom have told me that they were not clearly informed about the additional costs they would be signing up for when buying their house, costs which have caused significant stress and hardship. I had hoped to provide an example of this. However, unfortunately, all the cases are currently undergoing legal action, which only reinforces my point that change is necessary. As such, I welcome the introduction of this bill, which seeks to end these unfair practices. Now, it would seem Yes, of course.
I thank the honourable lady for giving way. I share a lot of concerns I think she is experiencing with her constituents, with many thousands of new homes being built, and the frustration and surprise amongst those constituents when they discover they have just bought a leasehold house. And we understand a third of the leasehold properties are typically houses. Does she agree with me that those properties that are built as houses that are leasehold, surely it would be the simplest thing just to make them all freehold and to get agreement with all the developers to reduce that cost of transfer.
Thank you very much indeed for that intervention. I wonder if that's maybe part of the main course that's coming up. I'm not sure. We shall see, I would suppose. So I think I've got the same memo as the member for Chipping Barnet and New Forest West, because I'm going to talk about retirement homes for a moment. So I would, however, like to draw my honourable friend's attention to an issue I've previously raised with him. I've been contacted by a leading developer and manager of retirement communities who have recently completed Mill Gardens and Farnham House retirement living in my constituency. McCarthy and Stone are concerned about the impact the bill could have on the retirement sector following the decision not to provide it with a concession from the ban on ground rents. While it is welcome that the bill does provide for a short transition period, it does not take into account developments which were in the development pipeline before the position change, and the impact this will have on schemes which remain part sold when the legislation comes into force. The current proposals are likely to mean that retirement developments, which started to be built when ground rents were expressly permitted, will find themselves split into two different lease structures operating within the same building. This is likely to cause legal complexity, on-site management issues and complicate future transactions of apartments, and could result in the financial sustainability of some communities being thrown into doubt on the basis that the collective ground rent income on which the funding of a development was predicated is substantially reduced even though the development has already been built. Furthermore, the financial contribution to the development costs of communal areas, which would previously have been shared in a transparent and equitable way, will become complicated, risking a sense of unfairness and disunity between residents within the same block. I wonder, therefore, if a modest technical change to the bill could be put in place, which would allow for developments already part sold to complete sales so that all apartments operate on the same basis. I listened and heard the points of my right honourable friend, the previous Secretary of State for this department, regarding retirement homes, but I'm wondering if that is the case, if a longer spell than 2023 for the transition to take place in retirement homes would perhaps be a better answer. That said, it cannot be right that buyers of new properties are faced with further financial demands for ground rent. House buying must be made fairer and more transparent, and freeholders and landlords must not be able to continue to amass significant profits from ground rent and indeed administration charges to the detriment of homeowners. This bill, therefore, is an incredibly important piece of legislation which I wholeheartedly support. Thank you.
Kevin Honrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.